Hey everybody, happy Valentine's Day. Um, this is a video in defense of love, Courtney. It really aggravates me. I'm just gonna try to get this off my chest because it drives me crazy and I don't understand why people think that she killed Kurt Cobain. I think I've touched on this in another video like in the past, but um, I didn't know that how prevalent this school of thought was, that people actually think right now that Courtney Love killed her husband when they had like their infant daughter. He was very young at the time. And I was like, why would people even think that? And that's kind of why I want to make this video, because it's so obvious that she didn't do it. But also it's like, I think we need to ask ourselves, like, why do we think the things that we think, Like, what sense does this even make? Like, why do we follow whatever cause or issue or school of thought just because, like, somebody said, oh, yeah, she killed her husband? I mean, anytime, like, something that serious is brought up, even about a celebrity, we need to be like, wait, why? Like, that's like an extreme reaction. Why isn't it? I think it's like the perfect example of like how gullible we are and how much of a problem that's been in the past. Um, she was booed when Nirvana was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and she got on stage and said some words, and she was booed. And I asked my friend, we were watching it, I was like, why are they booing her? And he was like, well, it's probably because all these people still think she actually killed Kurt. I was watching a random reaction channel. I can't remember the name of the guy. It was like one of the Mod Tricka that's super cool. His voice is like butter. He's like so smooth, but I can't watch those type of reaction compilations that often anymore, just because they tend to, I don't know, give me anxiety. Shocker. But I, when I was watching like compilation videos, there was this random white guy who kind of reminded me of my little niece, who's like 19, but he was just kind of like a laid back white dude. I mean, kind of generic sounding, but he had a good temperament, and I liked his compilations. And he said randomly, like, this is like an example of just like how random this is. Like, he was like, "Oh yeah, everybody knows Courtney killed Kurt. She killed him for sure." I'm like, wait a second. There is this man who was suicidal for years. He sung about it. He talked about it. He wrote about it. That's why his music is so beloved, because he captured pain that could only be real. And it touched her soul because it was so real and it was so raw and it was so painful. And he talked about it all the time. And then he does it. And people actually think she killed him. Why? If anybody was going to kill him besides himself, it would have been the record label, because they would have had something to gain, I mean, you would have to be a total psychopath, and she's just not. It's like obvious, but at the same time, I mean, he was a suicidal man, and I said this before in another video. I'm pretty sure that um, I know what he was thinking that night. And I know that's a bold statement, but it's what I would have done too when I was at my lowest point. Um, and then I really thought about like ending it all, and I would daydream and fantasize about like fatally overdosing. And I think that's where he was at. I think he had an extremely high tolerance, and he was looking to fatally overdose, but because he was a rock star and he had such a high tolerance, he knew that it was going to be close to not enough. So he got all the drugs he could. He probably bought out like two or three dealers. He got all the drugs he could, and was just gonna get high until he faded out, and he was gonna fatally overdose. But if he didn't, and if he came to, then he was going to go to plan B, which was, the shotgun. And if you were hypothetically going to do that, and if you were Courtney, not him, and not if you were going to kill yourself, but if you were going to kill your husband and make it look like a suicide, down to the point where she, like, they're like, oh, look at the handwriting discrepancies, she forged the second half of his suicide note. Okay, once again, if there wouldn't be a discrepancy, because if she was going to do that, she would just write the whole damn thing, or just write, that one part, or whatever. I could actually see her adding to his words. I could see that, but still, I mean, that's so what? That does not mean that she killed him, because, like I said, I mean, he was suicidal. It was obvious. It was known. He wanted to do that. He wanted to overdose, and that was the backup if he came to, which is what happened. He was going to do it because he was going to do it one way or the other. If she was going to do that, why would you even involve a shotgun? How stupid is that? With Montage of Heck, you could see their level of addiction, and I've been at that level of addiction where you're like nodding out, standing up, like you're like teetering, slumped over, standing up, and you're like your legs are giving out, and then you like kind of come to. She could have easily, when he was incapacitated, high, she could have easily just like given him a hot shot and killed him. I mean, she could have shot him up a couple times with the syringes of air, heart attack or whatever happens in. I don't know, but I mean, I know it's fatal. It's like it would be so easy to take someone out, and not and involve a shotgun. That is so extra, so unnecessary, so dangerous, because you'd have to position it. I mean, how stupid is it? But people still say that. Like that guy in the reaction video, he was just like, "Oh yeah, everybody knows that." I'm like, why do we think this way? Like, what is with us as a society and as individuals? And we could look at the big picture and be like, why? But we have to really look at our individual accountability and be like, why are we so easily deceived? And why do we believe the worst? And why are we so quick to, fall into this group think and judgment, when it makes not a bit of damn sense, And it's always like the worst decision and the worst outcome, it seems like. And it's like, why did they do that? Is it because people loved Kurt so much, and we've had such a sick, like a stupidly sick celebrity culture for so long, where we actually think because we can relate to their performances or their songs, or their lyrics or voice, or whatever, because we can really relate to that part of our soul that they display, that we actually think that we know them, and that we have judged them as like gods among men from like a distance. Is it that? Is it like celebrity worship? Like Kurt would never not. That's why he did. Same thing with Lane Staley. It's like, no, but nobody said, oh, I bet he was given a hot shot and actually murdered the man who had been writing about addiction and death by addiction, Lane Staley, forever, of Alice in Chains. When when it finally happened, nobody said, oh, I bet somebody snuck into his apartment and offed him. But with Kurt, when he did it, by his own hand, like I said, the shotgun was a backup. He was hoping to overdose. That's something else they said, and I've mentioned this in another video. They said, oh, the amount of drugs he had in his system, it would have been impossible to even hold a shotgun. Bullshit. That's so ignorant. Those standards are based on they're not based on addicts and addiction. The levels of like tolerance, or fatal overdoses, or lack of tolerance, are based on like prescribed medications. That's why fentanyl, like if you get a little bit on your finger and you have no tolerance, you can just overdose, like it just by, through the touch of skin. But addicts can, just inject straight fentanyl and be okay. It's like the difference is night and day. It's polar opposites between what is just a normal tolerance for an addict versus something that would be beyond fatal for the average non-addict. And Kurt was a rock star. He was a rock star and an extreme addict, and his tolerance was extreme. So that's bullshit too. Of course he could do it. He came to after teetering on the edge for a while, and just said fuck it. And I'm sorry if I repeat myself, and I mentioned that before, but just in honor of Valentine's Day, but really in honor of Courtney Love, because Live Through This is one of the best albums of the 90s. And the 90s had the best time in rock music, I think, arguably. And I mean, I know that's an opinion, but that is, I mean, that should like be in a time capsule, Live Through This, in my opinion. And she did Celebrity Skin was a really good whole album, obviously well after Kurt's death, so it's not like she was just like only good when he was around. They fed off each other, and they were like yin and yang, and I could see me being more like him, like kind of reserved, shy, not so extroverted. I'm really attracted to people too who just have kind of that ease and that real like boisterous take charge attitude. I do find that appealing sometimes, and I could see where he saw the appeal of her being such a strong woman who spoke her mind and gave like zero fucks, because he was such a sensitive soul. And they had the musical connection, of course they had the drug connection, and they were like, you know, literal royalty of like the era of grunge, and my God, do y'all think what, just because she's a woman or something, I hate to be like, oh, is it sexism? But I have to wonder, is it just like celebrity worship, or is it a sexist thing? Because so often the women get blamed for men's actions. That's absurd. I mean, I wonder if people just hate on her because she is a she. And the cool thing about female rock stars, and they are so rare, and I think she's like one of the best of all time to do it. Um, when women singers and rock stars really have like a rock and roll soul, the writing and the sound and the perspective that comes out in the song is um so special and so unique, because it's like when men write about when male rock stars sing, it's about love or longing or loss or hopes or goals. I mean, it's about the human condition. But when women write about, when women put out songs, it's like about that same thing, the human condition, but from a woman's point of view. And that's what's special about it. I mean, Live Through This. If you ever like, man, I can't crack women. They're so complicated. We're so complicated. If you've ever had like questions about what it's like to be a woman or to grow up, you know, become a woman, or just to be like inside a woman's mind, and just have to be kind of like this like Madonna whore thing or whatever, or even like feel those pressures to any degree, just listen to Live Through This. And it's like she captured it, and it was like, it is like epic and classic. That is a classic album. And so next time you hear something like, if it's an extreme, just be like, wait a second, why? Why do you think that at all? It is just like so absurd. Okay, this man who had, people always have everything to live for, but it doesn't matter that we can see it. It matters how they see it. You know, our own perspective, which is really like our own perspective, is all that matters. And people used to always tell me, like when I was like neck deep in addiction and self-loathing and self-destruction, like, oh, you know, you have this to live for, you have this potential, you could do this or that. And it's like, you know, I can see, I can see what I'm feeling and what I'm doing. I know, you know, you think you have these valid perspectives, and we think we have these valid perspectives of what, you know, any given celebrity is worth. But if they don't feel it, if you don't feel it for yourself, it doesn't matter. If everybody else on the planet can see it, you have to know it for yourself. And Kurt just hurt so much. And honestly, I think it's bullshit that it's like, oh, he's the product of divorce and he had stomach trouble and problems. I mean, um, that's like a new word, but I mean, I think that's bullshit. I think he just had depression and a sensitive soul and like an artist's heart, you know, and you can just see things and feel things really deeply when you have that point of view. And I just think it was too much. And, you know, drugs are the great escape. But when you reach the top of everything and you still have like this pit in your soul, I think that would be incredibly disparaging. But to say she did it, you know, just maybe it is sexist. You know, people just love to, I think, like hate on the woman sometimes, be like, oh, it's her fault. But nobody was gonna he was gonna do that regardless of who he was with, you know, because that's not something you do because of somebody else. It's something that you do because of yourself. And that's so sad. But his music wouldn't have been so good if he hadn't been in so much pain and been able to express it in such a genuine, raw way. So yeah, Courtney Love is the shit. And anybody who actually thinks she killed him, that's so moronic. Just please think about that next time if anybody in your friend group ever says that. That's so fucking stupid. It really is. Like, she wouldn't have used a gun. Totally unnecessary. I mean, besides even like the why would she do that, but just the way it was executed, you could have made that look like a suicide all day and not even had to fool with a gun. Bottom line. I mean, and that's like so obvious. And it's so obvious it makes me think about, you know, sexism. Really, like, is that where we're at? Or maybe it is just like this hero worship. Um, and live through this, like, sometimes I just go back and listen to it just because it makes me feel less alone. And personally, I don't know. I just think um, she's special. She's a special woman. So in defense of love, comma, Courtney, y'all have a good night.